the 1960s, Lawrence J. Peters. And he did a lot of research, and then a lot of research has been done then in organizational development, where people are promoted. People are promoted until they're promoted to their highest level of incompetency. And what companies tend to do is they'll promote their people, but the last promotion is at the level where the person is incompetent to perform that job. And this has been proven over and over and over again in organizational development. This is just a function of not knowing what to do with your highest performers. You don't want to lose them because they've got a lot of knowledge and skill. You keep promoting them until they get to a place where they can't do their job because they're just not skilled for it. And that's called the Peter Principle. And so the reason that you have so many incompetent people at higher levels of organizations is because they've been over promoted.
Yeah, and you cannot like under promote them.
You can't under promote them.
I don't know what's the right verb for it.
That's right. And then what they'll do is, of course, now they've been promoted to, let's say, regional vice president, and they're incompetent at that job. They won't go any higher, but they can go out into the market. I've been a regional vice president. Now I can get to the next level. So they get to the next level where they're even more incompetent, Yeah. And the problem just proliferates. And the trick is to, before a candidate is promoted to a leadership position, is to test them for aptitude. Does this person have the right attitude, the right personality traits, the fundamental skills, where we can actually train them to be a leader? Leadership requires training, but do they have the aptitudes so we can train the right person who will succeed in the training and then become an effective leader? And people aren't thinking that way, even though that's the way they have to be thinking, I think, in the 21st century.
So tell me a bit about your training. What does it mean if you want to teach me to have better emotional competency? What would you teach me?
Well, of course, every one of my clients is different, and it comes with different problems. But the first thing that I teach, foundational skill, is how to listen to other people's emotions, and then learning how to reflect back those emotions with a use statement. It's called affect labeling. Once you've learned that skill and you've practiced it for a while, then we start, what are the changes that you're seeing? And then the next step is to learn how to affect label yourself, so that if you become upset or angry or emotional, you immediately identify and tell yourself, I'm feeling angry or frustrated or annoyed or irritated, and actually have a wheel of emotions that really discreetly divides the basic emotions into subcategories, what Lisa Feldman Barrett calls emotional granularization. Then, once you've mastered that, which can take anywhere from 6 weeks to a year, depending upon how open you are to counterintuitive ideas, then we can start working on practical stuff. Like, for example, how do you the concept of high-fifth concept of adaptive leadership. When is technical leadership appropriate, where you're just kind of following procedures and policies? And when do you need to use adaptive leadership, where you now become a teacher and hold a safe container for your team to solve a problem that doesn't have an apparent solution right away? So understanding the difference between technical and adaptive leadership and how to use those skills. Understanding the fundamental psychological values that a leader brings to a group, which is focus, direction, and safety. And so what does focus mean? And what does direction mean? And what does safety mean? And as a leader, how do you create focus, direction, and safety in your group? How do you deal with the introverts versus the extroverts? How do you decision making? There are four different types of decision making. So which kind of decision making do you use, and in what circumstance, and why? And understanding decision-making processes, knowing how to lead something just as simple as conducting and leading a meeting. Most people don't know how to lead meetings, and so people hate going to meetings because it's a complete waste of time. That's because the person leading the meeting has never learned the fundamentals of how to lead a meeting. And there are 5 or 6 basic fundamentals you've got to learn and master to run a good meeting. Otherwise, you're going to create unhappiness, and people are going to not respect you, and because you're not respecting them. So the list goes on and on and on and on, all these basic skills. And it really depends on it really depends on where people are at and what they're looking for. But there's just a whole continuum of leadership skills, starting with learning how to listen to emotions that people can learn and master. And then as people become more advanced with me, then we start looking at specific problems they may be encountering in their career or in their workplace, or they might have be dealing with a superior who is very difficult to work with. And how do you manage that? They may have somebody who is sabotaging them below them. How do they deal with that? What do you do with passive aggressives? And so then we start getting into conflict management. How do you manage the conflicts that inevitably arise in organizations? And the other thing I do is teach them to lead 2 levels down. So you've got your direct reports. Maybe you have 5 or 6 people who directly report to you, but if you're higher up in the organization, they're going to have people reporting to them. You always work 2 levels down. You're always looking to train your replacement. And this is something that people don't get. What?
No.
Train my replacement?
No.
What? So you're
Why should I do that? Doesn't make sense.
Well, because you're not going to be there forever, and it's unlikely that you can train anybody to actually replace you. But if you train them to be as if they're going to be your replacement, guess what? Guess how competent they're all going to be, and which just floats your boat, right? And then you're going to get promoted, and they're just going to come right up underneath you. So if you want to get promoted, train the people underneath you to replace you, so that they perform so well that it's attributed to your leadership, and you just get promoted. Or maybe you say, I'm